Ben Lachlan. Fascinating man, Ben. Suffered with chronic back pain for most of his life. He found this method that he helps others with, and we start the conversation off with jazz of all things. He as a kid he loved jazz music. He was inspired by it with his father, and he now plays stand up bass. He gigs 3 times a week. He's in Canberra, Australia. Also Tai Chi, how that's changed his life. But he focuses on helping people with their back pain. Have you ever heard of the Alexander technique? He has webinars and Zoom sessions with people all across the world where they can help themselves with this process. You know, the pain isn't just in the body, it's also in the head. And he walks through it a little bit and how he helps people. He's helped all these people with their back pain. It's absolutely incredible, but he's fascinating and his approach is very scientific. Um, I asked him about, since he plays, a stand-up bass and a jazz ensemble, how much of your work, your attitude is art versus science. His view on discipline very unique as well. Thanks for listening and watching. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz, and here's my 45-second introduction. After starting my business in the 90s, I started developing poor habits of eating in my diet because I was working way too much. Before you know it, I found myself 340 pounds. The doctor told me if I don't lose the weight, I'm not going to see my daughter graduate. Took the next 7 months, lost 130 pounds. People think there's some secret. Ask me, how'd you lose that weight? Like there's some secret. There is no secret. How'd I lose the weight? Just one word: discipline. I've had other successes in life, and I attribute them all to discipline. Now, I'm not the king of discipline, but I believe that it can help all of us. Friends, colleagues convinced me to start a podcast. The podcast mission: how do we better ourselves and society? I talk to interesting people in health, fitness, sport, wellness, business, technology, science, art, and culture. And I eventually ask them how discipline plays a role in their life. Podcast vision: growth through learning from others. A lot to talk about, Ben Lachlan. Thank you so much for your time today. When did you start your fascination with jazz?
Oh boy. Well, my dad used to play Thelonious Monk and Duke Ellington records around the house. I guess my earliest memory of that was when I was maybe 13. And he had gone to the music library and made a couple of tapes. And I would just listen to them intensively, and I just loved them. And I guess I just, ever since then, I've always just had the feeling in me and the rhythm and the sounds. Yeah, I just love it. That's all I listen to.
In this fast-paced MSP landscape, how do you stay ahead? Introducing MSPinfluencer.com, your ultimate hub for MSP news, insights, and community connection, powered by Forza Dash. More than 75,000 MSPs subscribe to our MSP Influencer Pulse weekly newsletter, staying informed and ahead of industry trends. Tune in to emerging podcasts from Joey Pinz and leading MSP voices, offering essential tips, powerful insights, and success stories. Explore our multi-authored blogs, crafted specifically for MSP leaders, delivering fresh perspectives and actionable strategies. Celebrate excellence with the industry-leading Forza-MSP Influencer Awards, recognizing innovation, leadership, and impact in the MSP community. Join thousands of MSP professionals who trust MSPinfluencer.com to grow their business and expand their networks. MSPinfluencer.com, where today's MSP leaders connect, collaborate, and conquer, all powered by the Forza Dash platform, helping MSP vendors work effectively with MSPs and helping MSPs grow. And you got this great picture in your media kit of you playing the stand-up bass.
Yeah.
That's your instrument.
Yeah, that's my instrument. I play a bit of guitar and a bit of drums, but most of the time you'll see me standing behind the doghouse bass.
Boy, without the bass, there's nothing, right? I mean,
I would argue.
Yeah. And the difference between the stand-up bass and just a bass guitar, just like a slap bass guitar, what's the difference?
Mainly it's just the sound, and one is easier to carry to gigs. Yeah, the sound of the double bass. My dad gave me this tape of an album by Duke Ellington and Ray Brown, and the sound of the bass was just, I couldn't believe it. It just sounded so powerful and so rich, and I just always wanted to play it. And then when I started on electric bass. Actually, it's a funny story. my brother had an electric bass, and the local the big band at my school had an opening for the bass guitar, and I was like, they said, "Does anyone know how to play the bass guitar?" And I said, "Oh, I know how to play bass guitar," never having touched it in my life, but I knew my brother had one. So I started turning up to rehearsals, and I just kept the amplifier turned right down until I figured it out. I mean, I'd studied piano and clarinet before that, so I could read music and so on.
Oh, you can read music. Okay, that's a big
Yeah, but
advantage.
I
Okay.
definitely
Yeah.
kind of talked my way into that gig. And then a few years later, my uncle, who was for many years a professional symphony bass player, um,
Ah.
he loaned me a proper upright bass. So that's when that started.
And then that's it. The love affair
Yeah,
started.
yeah. And in fact, when I borrowed that bass, I was at college studying engineering and science. And I loved the instrument so much that I worked for 2 years out of college, and then I went to music school. So
Wow.
I kind of took a step backwards in career terms. I mean, there's this old joke, what's the difference between a jazz musician and a large pizza? And it's like a large pizza can feed a family of four.
Oh, that's terrible. Wow. So how often do you gig now?
Oh, probably 2 or 3 times a week. Yeah, I
Wow.
have a regular Saturday night and a regular Friday night, and then just whatever comes up. I'm trying to hustle a Wednesday night at the moment at an Italian restaurant, uh, playing guitar and singing with an accordion player, doing Italian American kind of jazz pop classics,
Uh,
like L'Amore and Volare and all of that kind of shtick, which I love.
right. Eh, do you write your own? Can you write music? Have you write
It's
songs?
it's something that I've kind of dabbled in. I have written and performed my own music, but it's probably not where my mind goes. Like it's not really a passion to write music. Like some people, like I've got a friend of mine who just he's a singer songwriter, and he just like throws off tunes a couple of weeks. It's just the
Wow.
way he kind of operates is to turn his experience into music and lyrics. But I'm not really like that. I can if I decide to, I can sit down and write stuff, but it's probably not really what I was put here to do.
Mm. What has Tai Chi done to your
Oh,
life?
Tai Chi. I mean, Tai Chi is amazing. Um, um, well, first of all, it started out as a Chinese martial art, like a fighting art. And what you see a lot of times these days, it's associated with, like senior citizens, which I'm rapidly becoming, but, doing it for recreation and relaxation. But at its heart, it's actually a martial art. And that's kind of the way I approach it. I study at a school called Heaven Man Earth, or there's a website called discovertaichi.com. And I've studied uh, quite a few martial arts over the years. Um, I started with Taekwondo when I was like 13, and did Aikido and Kung Fu, and a few other things. But Tai Chi is kind of what actually makes the most sense to me and it goes to the work that I do helping people with back pain, to kind of transforming your
Right.
body and the way you use your muscles and the way you use your musculoskeletal system and the biomechanics. The Tai Chi school that I go to is really amazing with that transformational work. So I love it. I mean, you'll find me out in the park waving my arms, a couple of days a week.
Wow. And it really centers you, doesn't it? My friends that do it just, yeah, rave about it.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. It's been described as moving meditation, and I think that's probably pretty
Mm.
fair. I
Hmm.
mean, I will say that
You
on my more distracted days, I can get out there and do all the forms and everything, and my mind will be spinning, and it'll be a million miles away, and I'll probably look
right,
very serene,
right.
and I'll look very enlightened, but actually, I'm just my mind is going crazy. But at its best, you're kind of absorbed in the movement and so on.
You said, Ben, that pain is not just in the body, but in the brain. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, absolutely. That comment was in relation, I guess, to back pain, specifically chronic back pain, which is back pain that persists over time. And what the scientific evidence shows is that 90% of back pain is called non-specific back pain, and that's where you go, they send you for x-rays or for MRIs or whatever, and they can't find anything. They don't see anything that would indicate that you should have back pain more than anyone else. And what can happen is that there's these little cells in the tissues of the body called nociceptors, and they're the fancy name for pain receptors, and they send messages up to the spinal cord and up the spinal cord, and it can make its way to the brain. But the brain has like this volume control in all of the different structures, parts of the brain that can turn up. It's like an amplifier. You can turn up the volume on the guitar to the point where it kind of feeds back, and you get that woo sound with an instrument. And it's a little bit like that with the actual pain system. It's called central sensitization, where the pain signals from the tissues, the muscles or the discs or the joints or whatever, become amplified, and they actually can take on a life of their own to the point where it doesn't really have anything to do with any particular damage anymore. It's just it's just your pain system getting too sensitized, too overreactive. So, and that happens in, I think, like 40-50% of back pain cases. So it's quite a thing, and I've experienced it myself.
So yeah, you help people with chronic back issues, Ben. How did you get there?
Well, I mean, I had them myself. Like I guess a lot of people who are in the sort of healing profession, they have firsthand experience, or with themselves or with people close to them. In my case, I had really bad neck and back pain. I don't know. Do you have anything like that yourself, Joey?
I get a little bit of back pain. It just kind of comes and goes. It sticks around 3 or 4 days, and then it disappears for
Yeah,
months.
yeah. So recurrent. Yeah, I mean that's not uncommon. With me, it was much worse. I had it every day. Back pain, neck pain, shoulder pain, tension headaches, and this is at the age of 21. I was like an old man
Whoa.
when I was at college, and I tried everything like doctors and physical therapists, massage, acupuncture, yoga, meditation, the whole thing, the whole 9 yards. And I discovered this thing I stumbled across a teacher of something called the Alexander technique. And the Alexander technique is really about retraining your brain so that you don't tense your muscles so much and you don't process pain, amplify the pain so much. And and maybe a few other things besides. And that's been incredibly successful for me, to the point where I no longer have pain. And I can now teach that to people who, one of my students had chronic pain from scoliosis. He had pain every day for 30 years. And after a
Ugh.
couple of weeks of studying with me, he, studying the Alexander technique, it was gone. It was fine, which was, totally liberating for him. It's like a get out of jail free card, because he'd been enslaved by this pain for so long.
Ugh. So you're pain
Yeah,
free, Ben, and it's all towards this Alexander technique.
yeah, and a few other things. Yeah, I mean, meditation's been really good. Neurolinguistic programming's been really good. A little bit of cognitive behavioral therapy, because a lot of the pain has to do with the way the brain and the spinal cord processes pain, processes the signals from the pain receptors. Things like cognitive behavioral therapy. For me, neurolinguistic programming. There's literature out there that acceptance and commitment therapy, which I don't really know anything about, but I read about it. A lot of those brain kind of psychological things can help, but they're not the whole story, because often there are things going on with your muscles that are causing pain. They're like squeezing the tissues, and they're distorting the joints, and they're generally kind of squeezing your body out of shape, and that causes the pain receptors to fire.
Hmm. And so when you had all this pain, how did you discover the Alexander technique? Did you go to somebody to help you there? Did you do research yourself?
It was actually just a stroke of luck. Actually, a friend of mine, a college friend of mine, he worked part-time. In fact, he might have finished college by then and was working full-time for the government. And a woman that he worked next to, her husband was an Alexander Technique teacher, and she was telling him about it, and he was like, "Oh, my friend should check this out." So I went and had my first Alexander Technique lesson, and I was like gobsmacked. I was just like
Huh.
completely like I had this overwhelming revelation, because we basically just had a lesson where he kind of just like lightly put his hands on my shoulders to draw my attention to the tension that I was holding there, and he guided me thinking in a way that reduced the tension, and a lot of the pain went away. But I actually got this new pain, which was from all of the tight muscles being stretched out. A little bit like if
Hmm.
you go to a yoga class or something, you feel this. It's a little bit of discomfort from the stretching. So I felt that, but I felt the original knots of tension go away just from thinking. And I was just like,
Wow.
man, I've been trying all this stuff with the muscles themselves, like getting massages and poking them with pins, acupuncture and stretching and all this sort of stuff. But actually, what's made this immediate difference, this black and white difference, was just the way I was thinking. And
Hmm.
that was overwhelming to me. Like, maybe overwhelming is not quite the right word. I was flabbergasted, maybe is a better word.
Mm. Give me an example how you kind of thought away the pain.
Well, so a lot of back pain. The neck is a very sensitive area for back pain. So, one way to think is there's a whole thing. I teach a whole course, and so I can't really. It's like trying to teach someone how to play piano in 5 minutes on a
Mm.
on a
Mm.
on a podcast. But I can give you a little taste, and that is that there's all of these muscles down the front of like in the throat, at the side, like if you see pictures of someone who's really angry, these kind of ropes of tension kind of stick out at the
Mm.
front, and then at the
Mm.
back, there's all these muscles connecting the back to connecting the head to the neck. They're called suboccipital muscles. And if all of these are tense at the same time, it's like, if you've got like a radio mast and you tense all the wires at the same time, what's going to happen? What do you think, Joey?
Hmm. If you have and you tense all the wires at the
Yeah,
same time, I mean, there's going to be lots of tension there.
yeah,
There's going to be lots of
lots of tension,
yeah.
and it's going to pull the mast down and compress it into the
Mm.
ground, right? Like if you tighten those wires, you're going to put a lot of stress on the central column. That's what
Mm.
happens with your neck. If you've got a lot of tension all the way
Hmm.
around your neck, it compresses the spine, it compresses the discs. The nerves don't like it. Over time, you can get what's called degenerative disc disorder. And so, what we often start with the neck. So, here's what we would do: we would just say, and there's a lot to this scientifically, which I won't go into, but you would just say, I'm allowing my neck to be free. I'm allowing all the muscles around my neck to just lengthen a little bit. I'm not trying to
Hmm.
do it. I'm just allowing those muscles just to ease off a little bit in all directions. So the radio mast doesn't lean any way or the other, but just the tension comes off a little bit, and the spine can decompress a little bit. And what we learn is we learn to take these thoughts and we make them a new habit. So instead of walking around tensing our neck, which many of us do, we're actually, releasing that tension. And then we do that with the back.
Hmm.
And then the tissues get less compressed, they get more blood circulation. They can process waste more because they're not being squeezed, so the circulation's better. So you get rid of the lactic acid and a few other things, and it just restores circulation, and your tissues have got space to move, space to breathe, and that's just sort of one of the steps. And what I discovered when I started this work was, I knew that I was tense, right? But until I started doing this work, I didn't realize how tense I was. Like I
Mm.
remember at a rehearsal playing bass after about 3 lessons of this stuff, and I was just like, "Oh my god, I'm so tense every time every time I play a note. Like the whole side of my body like seizes up, and I'm just like, wow, that was happening, and I didn't even know it. And that's the same for a lot of us. The tension becomes so habitual we don't even know it anymore. It's just like that sound that we kind of tune out because it's always there. We can, if we listen for it, we're like, oh, okay, yeah, I can hear that. Like traffic noise, I can hear the traffic noise, but you
Mm.
can go the whole day without hearing it because your brain is just tuning it out. And it's the same with chronic tension that causes chronic pain. That you tune out the tension, but you can't tune out the pain. So, yeah,
Hmm.
free the neck.
And can this be said with all like sciatica, like leg pain? Can you do this routine? Is it just for the back?
Yeah, I mean, so nothing works for everything. Sciatica is an
Mm.
interesting one because there's two main causes of sciatica. One is called radiculopathy, which is basically where the bottom of the spine, if you're really tense in the lower back, the bottom of your spine kind of like curls a little bit. You get this kind of uh, you get this kind of dip in your lower back from the tension, and also from sometimes the discs degrade, and that causes the spine to actually crush the sciatic nerve roots. So
Hmm.
the nerve roots, I think there's 5 of them that come out of the spine, and they come out and they sort of merge into the sciatic nerve. And where they come out of the spine is a little hole called a foramen. And if you crunch your lower back and tense it, you can make that foramen smaller. And you do that and you crush the sciatic nerve roots, and then you get sciatica. Now, there's another way to get it, which is
Wow.
called piriformis syndrome, because it runs under the piriformis muscle, which is kind of like in your butt. And you can release the piriformis using this work as well. So, uh, yeah, I mean, but it's not. Uh, if you've got serious degeneration of your lower back, which can happen if you leave this stuff for too long, then degeneration of the spine, then you may have a problem that Alexander technique can probably improve, but maybe not make go away
Hmm.
because some of that damage is hard to come back from. Have you got friends?
Yeah,
Have
let's
you got any
talk
friends
about.
with sciatica?
I think I do. I'm not sure. It feels kind of like a hamstring
Uh-huh.
pull, right? I don't. How do you tell the difference?
Well, I should say I'm not a doctor, so I'm not really the person to
Right.
diagnose you. I would say, yeah, go and see your primary care physician and get a proper diagnosis if it's troubling you. Um, I have a hamstring pull myself. That's kind of annoying because it means I can't really run, and
Ugh.
that's
Yeah.
that's a nuisance. I mean, it's not life threatening, and I've got a lot to be grateful for, but that's a niggle.
Yes.
But yeah, I'd go and get a diagnosis, I would say, and yeah, there's definitely, if it is sciatica, then I would, you know, I'm not a betting man, but I would say, the sort of stuff that I do would be worth investigating, and I think would be more likely to lead to long term to better outcomes than some of the quick
Mm.
fixes.
So should people practice this Alexander technique even if they're not in pain to be proactive?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's two. It's a really good question. There's two main motivational styles that people have. One is towards, and one is away from. Now, when I started
Mm.
Alexander Technique, I was away from because I was trying to get away from pain. When I got rid of the pain, I found that Alexander Technique made me feel so good that I wanted to keep doing it, and I wanted to help other people.
Hmm.
So it became a towards, because when you do it, you feel more relaxed, you feel more coordinated, more balanced. You have better circulation, better energy, better clarity, a lot of psychological benefits.
Hmm.
So I found it to be something that I just wanted more of. Now, as a preventative, then I would say, yeah, absolutely. You know, everyone should be taking vitamins. Nobody does. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Like we're all so busy. People are busy, stressed. Like if it's not hurting, they're probably not going to do anything. Even if it is hurting, they're still probably not going to do anything until it gets bad enough. So I would love to see everyone practicing Alexander technique and future proofing their bodies, but realistically, you know, Would I have done that before I experienced this back pain? Probably not. But if you do want to feel better, particularly for performing artists, use a lot of Alexander technique. There's quotes from, everyone from John Cleese to Hugh Jackman, saying how great this stuff is. It's really, it's
Really?
really strong in the performing arts with people who use their bodies for a living. Famous musicians, actors, dancers, a lot of performing artists. So, and that's because they may not be in pain, but they can always improve the way they use their body. They can improve the quality of their voice, which is something that happens. They can improve their coordination, how fast they can play, how good their sound is. I mean, I'm as a double bass player, every time I practice the bass, which is probably 3 or 4 times a week, I'm always, doing things like making sure my neck is free.
We've heard promises from pharmaceutical companies that they're trying to alleviate all pain and tried with a lot of these opiates and things like that. What are your thoughts on medicating pain?
Well, I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, then everything looks like a nail. I mean, pharmaceutical companies, what they do is pharmaceuticals. So they're going to try and address the human condition through pills. And I mean, I think that's good. I mean, we've got a lot of great medications because of that. The evidence for opioids for chronic long-term back pain is not good. Like short-term, what are called NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, things like ibuprofen, I think it's called. I can't remember what it's called in the US. Those work for a while. They can be helpful, but one of the problems I think is that pain. Okay, so pain when you get central sensitization and it just runs amok. Maybe sometimes the original issue may have healed, but you're still getting this pain. Like, for example, phantom limb syndrome. Have you heard of that, Joey? That's where you've had a limb amputated. You've had an accident, or you've been in conflict, and you've had to have a limb amputated, and the limb can hurt. You get pain from your fingers, but you don't have the fingers anymore. So the pain system can give you stuff that is, there's no physical treatment for. But there is a lot of pain where there is something going on physically, whether it's chronic tension is causing circulation problems, or you've got sciatica, or you've got, something like that. And just turning off the pain is kind of like taking the battery out of the fire alarm. It doesn't make noise anymore, but your kitchen might be on fire. And maybe the pain is telling you not to move in a certain way, not to lift that thing. And if you didn't have the pain, maybe you would lift that thing, and maybe you'd damage yourself even further. So pain's a funny thing. It can be a useful signal, but it can also be, it can be like that guitar feedback that's just out of control, and it's not really serving a purpose. I mean, pain is only useful if it changes your behavior. Like you don't lift that box. But pain where you're lying in bed and you're in agony, that's not helpful. So, dealing with that pain, reducing that pain is a good thing. Does that make sense?
Has technology?
Does that make sense?
Sorry. Yeah, it certainly does. Has technology helped in reducing pain? Hey, Joey Pinz here. Want to take your podcast experience to the next level? I'm excited to invite you to become a YouTube member. It's the absolute best way to support the channel and enhance your connection. Join our amazing community and unlock the incredible perks, custom loyalty badges, exclusive emojis, and priority comment replies. Your voice will always stand out. Be the first to watch new videos with early access, receive special membership shoutouts, and get exclusive behind-the-scenes photos and updates. Dive into content available only to our members, special videos, deep dives, and insider perspectives. Engage directly with me. Suggest podcast topics you want to hear, and even get personalized video shoutouts. Hit the join button right now and become part of something special. Let's build this amazing community together. I can't wait to welcome you as a new member. Join the Joey Pinz family today.
Well, again, you'd probably need to talk to your doctor. I mean, from my reading of the medical research, there are things that, surgery, I guess, as a means of last resort. I mean, I can't really speak to pain generally. I can speak to back pain, particularly lower back pain. But I think, surgeries are getting better and better. Like they can do spinal fusions. I mean, there are a lot of surgeries that are not 100% guaranteed, but when they work, they can be helpful because they can immobilize things that are moving around and hurting. There's also like the radio frequency ablation thing where they basically cook the nerve, the pain, the nerve that carries the pain. They basically use a radio gun to, what's called a ablate, which basically means like cook the proteins, and that means the pain signals can't get to your brain anymore. People find that helpful. I'd put that in the same category as, is the pain serving a purpose? If it is serving a purpose, like don't lift that box, then is that a good thing? So that's another use of technology. I think the work that I do, Alexander technique is taught one-on-one traditionally. It was invented in the late 1800s, early 1900s by a guy called F.M. Alexander. And I teach it now over the internet on Zoom classes with group classes, and people get fantastic results with that. And that saves them from, traveling. Maybe they don't have an Alexander. I calculated the other day, I think there's an Alexander technique for every 3.5 million people alive. So
wow,
rare as hen's teeth. But you can now access that through the internet, and I can now teach people all over the place through technology. So yeah, I think there's a few ways that it's been very helpful. I do think though that back pain is underserved by scientific research because it's actually the leading cause of disability globally. Like, yeah,
really?
chronic lower back pain is the leading cause of disability globally. There was a World Health Organization study called the Global Burden of Disease or something similar, 2019, that made that observation. And there's it's kind of intractable. It's very hard to. It's proved resistant to the medical profession in that. There was a recent paper by an author called Cashin, which was, I think, might have been the British Medical Journal, which looked at back pain treatments and found that only 1 in 10 was successful. So I think we need, I don't know about more technology, but I think we need more research. We need more funding. We need more, attention, because I think it's one of those things that everyone either has back pain or probably knows someone who has back pain, but we don't do much about it, and we lose productivity. We lose our emotional well-being. Maybe withdraw a little bit from social contact sometimes if it's hurting. We might take time off work. We might go to spend money on treatments. I think there was I can't remember the figures, but something like the lifetime burden of back pain is like $35,000, I think, in one study.
Wow.
So yeah, it's certainly, I think, something where a little bit more, like I say, I don't know about technology, but a bit more research and development would make a lot of difference to a lot of people.
And of course, the issue with back pain, Ben, is that it's just, if your back hurts, it can just immobilize you. You just have to lay down. You can't do anything. At least, when you have pain in your foot or hand or something, you're just kind of slowed down a bit. But with back pain, my goodness, a couple times that I've had it, I had to just lie down. It's terrible.
Yeah. How long did you have to lie down for?
The last time I remember, just one night, it was just really bad. And then I woke up in the morning and it was gone.
Yeah. Did you do anything to it?
No, that's the thing. I
To
don't
bring it
remember
on?
anything that triggered
Yeah.
it. Yeah, I don't remember anything that triggered. Just kind of slowly came on. Is this typical?
Oh, well, I mean, it can be like, was there, did you have an original injury that has caused this thing to recur? Kind of, that can sometimes happen. Like, you have an injury and it sort of heals, but it kind of comes back. It recurs, either by itself or because you do something that kind of triggers it.
Mm. Not that I know of, but the term "I threw my
Yeah.
back out" when somebody says that, what does that mean?
Yeah. Well, I guess uh, it means as many things as there are people who say it, but I think the observation would be that if you have a condition, if you either have an acute injury, like you strained your back or something like that, then your muscles kind of learn how to do that, and your nervous system learns how to do that, and so it becomes more likely that you'll do it again. The other
Interesting.
thing is if you've got chronic tension in the neck, in the torso, in the back, maybe you've got bad posture, is your what's called biomechanics, like the way force moves through your body and the way your body supports weight can be can work in such a way as it concentrates stress in a particular spot. And when that happens, if you're lifting something, all of the force goes to a particular, you know, spot in your back, and that's where it can blow out. And if you're if the way that you're organizing your tension and your posture makes that happen, then that's going to happen every time. So every time you lift something that's too
Hmm.
heavy, or anytime you put strain on your body, even if you turn around a certain way, it all kind of goes to one point, and that's where that part of your body can get a little bit unhappy and go into, then you get what's called spasm, where the muscles
Mm.
are potentially damaged, or they otherwise want to immobilize your structures because they don't want damage to happen. So they think something's going wrong here. I need to shut this down, from a movement perspective, and so they go into spasm, and then that's very painful, and they
Hmm.
kind of shut down any sort of movement until the body can heal what was wrong with that. So that can be very painful and very distressing, because you kind of you don't you know you don't want to blink your eyelids because you're afraid that this spasm can come back. Um, so yeah, I mean that's an extreme situation, but um, if you're able to manage the muscle tension better, so that you distribute the force, distribute the stress, so that you're more flexible, more balanced, then you can prevent the likelihood of that occurring, because you're not creating those conditions of concentration of stress. It's like if a house was resting on one brick, that brick would be pulverized. But if you got all the
Hmm.
bricks, then they each take the right amount of load. And it's like that with your body. If there's one place where all the stress is concentrated, then that part, you know, can be damaged.
How do you feel about chiropractors?
Uh, well, chiropractors have good evidence is good that they help relieve symptoms. The evidence is not really there. I'm not a medical researcher, but from what I've read, so do your own research. Um, from what I've read, chiropractic isn't a fix for the condition that's causing. It's not a fix for the cause of back pain. It's a temporary relief from the symptoms. And the reason
Hmm.
for that, I believe, is that a lot of the symptoms so you wouldn't go to a chiropractor if you had a fractured vertebra, or a crushed nerve or something like that, or maybe a crushed nerve you might, but you go to a chiropractor when your muscles are pulling your spine out of shape, and or your muscles are tense, or your muscles are unbalanced, and the chiropractor kind of uses the table, and they crack you and they massage you and they kind of put you in a better shape, in a better pattern of muscle tension, and that's great. The problem is that, why were your muscles like that in the first place? Well, it's because they're controlled by your
Mm.
brain and your spine. So it's a little bit like, uh, you've got a 4-year-old who's wearing a nappy and who's pooping their nappy, and you go and change the nappy a couple of times a day. But actually, what you need to do is toilet train the kid. Well, here's another
Hmm.
example. My sister, when she was, I don't know, like 2, my mum used to get on the phone, and in those days, the phone was on the wall and there was the kind of curly cable, and my sister would be out of reach of the phone, and she would go to the cupboard, open the cupboard, and pull out all the Tupperware and throw it on the floor. And she thought
Huh.
this was great fun. And my mum would have her phone conversation. She'd hang up the phone, and she'd go to my sister, and they'd put everything away very carefully, put the Tupperware away, and then close the door, and it was sorted. But this would happen every time my mum got on the phone. Eventually, she got with my sister and kind of taught her not to do that. And that's, I believe, what we need to do. Like going to a chiropractor or a massage therapist. It's good, it's good symptom relief, but you're just kind of cleaning up the Tupperware. What you want to do is you want to train the toddler not to throw the Tupperware on the floor. And that's really what the
Hmm.
Alexander technique does. Is it actually trains your brain to use more helpful patterns of muscle tension and coordination, so you don't need any sort of adjustment.
Can one teach themselves, do research and teach themselves the Alexander technique?
Well, yeah, I think so. I mean, Alexander himself taught himself. I mean, he was a. I mean, there's
Ah.
Nobel Prize winners on record saying Alexander was a bit of a genius, and it was, like an incredible story of medical research. What he, this is Nobel Prize winners saying this, what he did. But it's a bit like saying, can you teach yourself piano, and can you teach yourself to play a concerto? Yes, you could.
Hmm.
You'd need a lot of talent, and you'd need a heck of a lot of perseverance.
Hmm.
Um, because part of the problem is we don't know what we're doing with our muscles. We've got
Right.
all this tension, but we don't know. It's sort of like the traffic noise that gets filtered out. Alexander himself had like 3 mirrors that different angles, and he worked for 10 years, like just observing he was an actor and he kept losing his voice.
Hmm.
And the doctors couldn't tell him why. And he kind of figured out it was because he was like tensing his throat when he went to talk, when he went to recite. He was fine in conversation, and this is the days before microphones, you had to project your voice. And the way he tried to project his voice, he really tensed it, and he'd lose his voice.
Hmm.
And he spent years in front of the mirrors, but he was incredibly persistent and incredibly determined. And I think if you were to figure this out for yourself, you would probably have to be. Um, and what took him 10 years might take you 1 or 2 years if you worked with a teacher.
Must be real rewarding, Ben, when you help somebody and their pain is relieved. That must be really nice.
Oh, it is, Joey. It's funny. I'm always amazed. Like, I always think, man, this stuff really works. Like, it's a
Mm.
surprise every time. It's funny. I've done it for so long. I've studied Alexander for 30 years. I've taught it for 5 years, and I've helped a lot of people release themselves from pain. And here's the other thing that I like about Alexander technique. If you go to a massage therapist or an acupuncturist or a chiropractor, they're doing something to you. You're kind of passive, and they're manipulating you. Alexander technique is the other way around. You're making the change from the inside out using your mind.
Hmm.
And so where with chiropractic or with massage you can say, I made that person feel better. I did something to them that made them feel better. I can say they did it themselves. They figured out how to get rid of their own back pain. They figured out how to get rid of their own sciatic pain. All I did was teach them the tools. And then that means it's a terrible business model, by the way, because you teach someone these tools and they never come back. You know,
Right.
this guy who I helped get rid of scoliosis pain, he had for 30 years, and I helped him get rid of it in 3 weeks. He said, I was gobsmacked. I was amazed. And I said, do you want to do further study? And he's like, no, don't need to. Whereas if you're a chiropractor he'd been seeing a massage therapist once a month for 10 years. So really good repeat business. I still haven't figured that bit out because
Mm,
I help people heal and then they walk away.
right. You know, it's interesting, Ben, because you're a musician. There's a lot of art in your life, but this Alexander technique seems to be all science. So when you approach things, are you more art than science, generally speaking?
uh, I think I'm pretty science. Like my first degree was in science, in pure math, and
Hmm.
my second degree was in systems engineering.
Wow.
I did an honors thesis in machine learning, which sort of the foundations of AI. That was back 30 years ago.
Yeah.
I got the university medal, which is the highest honor for that
Wow.
thesis, and I think I'm pretty left brain, pretty rational in my approach to life. When I'm performing, though, I I don't really think that way. I just try and feel. I try
Mm.
and connect with the musicians, with the people in the room. Try and just get a vibe going. I think that's why I love music so much. Is it's this perfect balance of thinking and feeling for me.
Hmm. Hmm.
How about you? Are you a more of a left brain or a more of a right brain?
It depends, Ben. You know, it depends. I do play a little bit of guitar, but yeah, sometimes when you get in that kind of mode and you're just feeling it, it's so
Mm,
nice, you know. It's almost like something else is taking over, you know. But I guess I use science as a foundation, and then generally speaking, I let my gut make the last decision.
yeah, yeah,
You know, like I'm playing golf, for example, and it's, 150 yards, there's a 5 mile an hour wind, there's a slight uphill. And, the science will say an 8 iron, but you know what? I feel a seven, so I will let my gut override it. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't.
yeah,
But I think that's
yeah.
similar
I
to
think
most
you
people.
use your rational mind to inform
Mm.
your gut, but your gut,
Yes, kind of create the
yeah, yeah,
case,
exactly.
but then the gut makes the decision. Yeah, yeah,
And then the gut has its
yeah.
own
I think
logic.
that's Yeah, 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 and it's not always right, but it's at least the way my gut feeling, there's that
Yeah.
expression, right? But has there been anything in the last month or so that you changed your mind on?
Uh, I'm sure there's been a million things. I mean, there's stuff with my kids all the time.
So you're a father.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you sort of uh, you have an opinion. I mean, my wife uh, told me of this interesting distinction from a book she was been reading or a podcast or something or other. The difference between authoritarian versus authoritative parenting. An authoritarian, you sort of make the rules and you're kind of rigid and you're emotionally detached and you kind of enforce the rules. Whereas authoritative, it's more of a conversation.
Mm,
You come into it with your ideas of what should happen, but you listen and
mm,
you can be a little bit flexible. So I think the time where I change my mind most often is probably with my kids because I'm listening to them and I'm I guess my intention is always the same, which is to be a good parent for them to learn, grow, be able to self regulate. But the specifics of that, in terms of the rules or what's going on at any given moment, are probably pretty flexible, especially with my daughter. She's extremely strong willed.
how old is she?
She's 11.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, yes, yes. Yeah, she's developing into young womanhood. Yeah.
You got kids?
Yeah, so I do. They're my 2 daughters, but they're older. They're in their 20s. Yeah, so, I remember those years when they were, yeah, those that preteen. Yeah, it was fun. I have fond memories. So Ben, I started my business, a tech firm,
Mm.
back in '90s, just kind of supporting networks and writing software and um, working way too hard. Putting my health in the back seat. Next thing you know, I'm in front of the doctor, and she says I'm at 340
Wow.
pounds. Uh, yeah. and she says, "If you don't lose this weight, you're not going to see your daughter
Mm.
graduate." It just poor eating habits, not exercising anymore, cutting back on all my athletic endeavors, So I'm driving home, upset with myself. How did I let myself do this? It's no longer just me, Ben. And I've got a family now. I could abuse myself all I want, but now I've got to be here for this family, like you just said. So spent the next 6, 7 months, lost about 120
Wow.
pounds, and yeah, and kept it off. Never had any back pain, by the way, during any of that. But you can't look at it as a finishing line when you lose that weight. You got to, it's lifelong changes. Too many times people gain the weight back. And so when I tell people this story, they're, what's your secret? What'd you do? And there's no secret, Ben. Discipline. That's how I kept it off. I got willpower, focus, motivation. How does discipline play a role in your life, Ben?
Yeah. Well, discipline is it's an ongoing project. I'm not the sort of person who kind of,
Mm,
you know, who is naturally disciplined in every aspect of my life. I think I'm disciplined in some aspects of my life, but certainly exercise. Um, I would probably not. I probably wouldn't do it if I wasn't disciplined.
mm,
Um, there's a million reasons not to do it. I don't feel like it. If you go by how you feel about exercise, you probably will never do it because you never really feel like doing it until after you do it, and then you feel great. Um, Discipline. I think I really learned discipline when I was at music school, learning to practice.
mm,
Because up until then, I was at college in New Jersey, northern New Jersey, just sort of right by Manhattan, and
mm,
I I had this, and I was still getting back pain and headaches at that point, and I would I wouldn't really feel like practicing. I'd feel kind of like tense. I'd feel headachy. My body wouldn't feel right, and then I'd feel every couple of weeks I'd feel really good for a day or two, and then I'd practice really hard, and then the headaches would come on really badly, and I was in this kind of cycle. And a teacher or a musician, performing artist, and a teacher called Kenny Werner wrote a book called Effortless Mastery, which I would recommend to any musician. And
hmm,
in it, I went to a workshop of his and I said, "What can I do? Like, I'm kind of stuck in this cycle." And he said, "Just practice 5 minutes every day and don't be held hostage to this. Even if you feel terrible, even if you've got a headache, just practice 5 minutes. And then from there, you go to 10 minutes and then 15 minutes and then up to half an hour,
mm,
maybe a couple of hours a day. But discipline is a muscle. And so I find, even if I'm with my exercise, some days I just really don't feel like it. I feel like doing it. I've got no energy. It's like my nervous system feels depleted. I can't and what I do is I just walk through it. I just say, okay, I'm going to do, I've got to do, however many push-ups. I'll do it on my knees. I'll do it on my belly, but I'll do them.
mm,
Maybe if I'm really, maybe if I had an all-nighter or maybe even I'm sick, I'll just lie there and like just tense the muscles a little bit, not even try and push myself up, but
hmm,
I'll do it. I'll actually walk through it, spend the time, do the reps, and what I'm building is not muscle, but I feel like I probably am because there's studies that show if you imagine exercise, then your muscles will grow. But more than that, moreover, what I'm building is the connection between intention and consistent action, and I think that's really discipline. Now, as relates to Alexander technique, discipline is about bringing order to your what's called your automatic postural control, which is part of your brain. Well, it's not just your brain; it's also your nervous system. It's multiple parts of your brain, but where your postural habits are stored. So by postural habits, I mean, do you kind of stoop over? Do you tense your lower back? Do you just generally have one shoulder lower than the other? Like, what are your habits about the way you use muscle tension to organize your skeleton, to organize your body? And if you want to overcome those sorts of back pain problems, one thing you can do is to bring some regulation to your automatic postural system, and that requires discipline. That requires using these
Hmm.
mental directions, like I'm freeing my neck, for example. There's a lot more to it, and so I have I teach my students this. I think I've got one on my desk. When I have my course, I've got like a worksheet. Hold it up to the camera. So it's got the directions on it, and then there's tally marks. So is that backwards for you, or is that?
No, it's good.
Yeah. So it's like a worksheet. So I decide what I'm going to do, and then I decide how many times I'm going to do it in the day, and I just mark it off. And maybe I'll have an alarm on my phone that just goes every 5 minutes, just a silent little vibrate buzz, and that just reminds me, oh, okay, now I'm going to release my neck. I'm going to allow my head to move up, and allow my back to lengthen and widen, release that tension. I just do that for 5 seconds maybe. So in a whole day, I might just use 1 minute, but what I'm doing is
Hmm.
disciplining my automatic postural control through repetition.
And it's amazing that you were taught discipline to in music school. I get a lot of pushback, not a lot. I get some pushback from musicians. Oh, I'm a musician. I don't want anything to do with discipline. And there's no wrong answer, of course, but I always think, well, you got to know chord structure. You got to know, you got to practice at least a little bit. There's some kind of self-discipline there, but that's what I always think. But it's interesting how you bring up music school with discipline.
Yeah, I mean, I think any classical musician would know all about it. If you want to, I think it probably comes down to the extent to which you have to master your instrument to meet your artistic
Mm,
goals. If you need to master your instrument, then you're going to need discipline, because
mm,
competence at instrumental, at your whether your instrument is voice or something else, skill comes from repetition. Repetition is the mother of skill, and consistency, reliability, and just putting in the reps, putting in the hours. So discipline is absolutely part of it. Now, if your artistic goals don't require you to master your instrument, if they're more around, turning up the distortion and wailing away, or just writing songs that flow out of you whenever you feel like it, then cool. Like, you be you. For
hmm,
me, in music, double bass is a hell of an instrument. It's like, I think probably like trumpet, where there's this barrier to sounding good, which is physicality.
hmm.
Piano, you can just walk up to and just play a note. You can play a scale. I can show you. You've never played piano before. I can show you how to play a C major scale. I give you a trumpet, and you need to practice probably for a month. I give you a
Mm,
double bass. You might need a month or two till you can play a
wow.
C major scale in tune, um, and be relaxed and have it feeling good. So
Hmm.
for me, playing bass, there's just this. You have to deal with the instrument. It's a it's a hell of a thing, a double bass, and
Hmm.
so yeah, I practice all the time. Disciplined.
Yeah.
I'll show you something else. I'll show you something else that you might appreciate from a discipline point of view. This
Okay.
is my half-hour practice routine. So in the
Wow.
second column is the category of what I'm trying to do, like left hand pizzicato, which is plucked,
Huh.
then arco, which is with the bow, then walking lines, and then there's 4 different routines. And then, so anytime I practice, that's a half-hour routine, because I spend 5 minutes ish on each one,
Wow.
and then I'll choose. I'm going to do routine 2 today. So what does it say? Machado, Zimmerman, jazz bowing patterns. So Machado is Marcos Machado. He's an author who wrote a book called The Tao of Bass. Really hard technical exercises. Zimmerman wrote a book on the art of bowing. So I'll just spend 5 minutes on each, or maybe I don't even spend 5 minutes. Maybe it's only a couple of minutes on each because I want to spend more on the latter ones. But what it stops me from doing is having decision fatigue of like, oh, what should I do next? I'll do this for a minute, and then like, oh, what should I do next? It's like I just take that decision making out of it, and I just have. Sometimes I just set 5 minute timer, and I'll just do it. I don't need to make any decisions. I just need to look at what's next. The other thing is I have a book, which is one of those like like clear envelopes, and this is decision fatigue. So
Decision fatigue.
this is Francesco Petrarchi. This is like a page out of his book. I've got the book, but I photocopied it, and then this is Machado here, Marcos Machado. So I've got a few pages that I'm working on, and I'll photocopy them and I'll put them in this book. So all I have to do is just flip to that page. The buzzer goes off. I just flip to Machado and I get started. So the discipline actually comes from, for me practicing, the discipline actually comes from setting up the system so that I'm not, because if I just try and practice by myself, I'll probably practice for 5 minutes because I'll try something and then my mind will wander and then I'll get bored. Now what I do is I just structure my practice routines, and maybe it's not exactly what I feel like doing, but there's power in just executing something, even if it's not the perfect thing.
Ben, what motivates you?
Well, with the Alexander technique, it's helping people. I've got a goal. So the first time I ran my course, Foundations of Back Release, I had 10 people finish the course. And on average, they went from 24 days of back pain a month before the course to having 4 days of back pain a month after the course.
Wow.
And so I took that to mean that I had saved the world from 200 days of back pain.
Huh.
And so my goal with Back Republic, my business, is to save the world from 1 million days of back pain.
So given that motivation, how do you measure success?
Well, I guess I guess you probably know from your time, there's leading indicators and lagging indicators. So the lagging indicator is, the output. So that's the days of back pain saved. The leading indicator is the things you do to make that happen. So whether that's, like going on a podcast, or whether that's coming up with I'm writing a webinar at the moment. I'm doing this webinar at the moment where this is a little bit of a diversion, but I think it's fun. Where I'm looking at the human neuromuscular system as a reality TV show called House of Heroes, and you've got Nova, who's like kind of like Neo in the Matrix. I say he because I'm a he. He's he's the conscious mind, and his superpower is learning, but his weakness is that he delegates stuff, habitual muscle tension. Then there's Felicity, who I think of as like Hermione Granger from Harry Potter. I don't know if you know that. She's kind of like a control freak. Sure. She's extremely organized, but she's a little bit neurotic. And she's like the voluntary motor system. So she's what Neo uses to control the body. But then there's Jed, who's he's like a retired, combat serviceman. He's a vet. And he used to be really athletic and really balanced, really fit, but he's kind of gotten disillusioned, and he's kind of, gotten soft, but he can come back. So he's the automatic postural control system. He needs to kind of shape up again and meet the challenge. Then there's Biff, who's like the Hulk, who's like the neuromuscular system. He's like the muscle of the house. And then there's the baby, who's like the pain system. So I have a story about how all these interact, where Nova gets stressed, and then Felicity goes nuts and tells Biff to start smashing things up, and he squeezes the baby, and then the baby screams, and the baby won't stop screaming, and then Biff gets more upset, Nova gets painful, and then
Hmm.
so
So it's an easy way to learn when you have kind of characters that
yeah,
way.
it's fun. I mean, like explaining neuroscience is like chewing ground glass, it's terrible.
Want to show your love for discipline, inspiration, and the Joey Pinz podcast? Now's your chance. Introducing the brand new Joey Pinz merch store, where style meets discipline. Choose from premium apparel, cozy hoodies, stylish hats, durable bags, and your new favorite coffee mug, all featuring the iconic Joey Pinz logo. Perfect for podcast fans, discipline enthusiasts, or as unique gifts for friends and family. Every purchase supports the Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations podcast, helping us continue to inspire greatness and promote positive change. Visit joeypins.com/store today and wear your discipline proudly. Joey Pinz merch. Wear it, share it, and live it. Well, I love what you're doing, Ben. And, there's too much back pain out there. And, you know, I love the idea that there's somebody out there doing it, helping people over Zoom, right?
Mm.
So they don't have to come visit you, so they can help themselves. I think it's wonderful. You don't not only helped yourself, you could have easily just kind of got that and walked away, but now you're helping others. I think that's the trait of a remarkable person. I thank you for that. Anybody watching or listening, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, I would just say go to my website, backrepublic.com. At the moment, there's a quiz that you can take. There's like an orange button on there. You press the orange button, you answer some questions, and you learn a little bit maybe about your own back pain and how you can handle it. So backrepublic.com, or just join the mailing list. But yeah, the quiz is a lot of fun. And if you do the quiz, you'll get on the mailing list, and then you'll hear about the course and anything else. You can ask questions. You can find out more about ways in which you can help yourself. And we didn't even talk
Backrepublic.com.
about MSPs today.
That's right. That's right. You know about that, don't you? You're also on LinkedIn. You're also on YouTube. I'll make sure to put that in the show notes. You're in the Canberra area, correct?
Yes, that's kind of like the Washington DC of Australia.
All
Yeah.
government.
So yeah, it's the capital, but it's not the biggest city. It's like like I guess 400,000 people, whereas Sydney and Melbourne are like maybe 5 or 6 million. So it's a smaller
Right.
city, but it's the seat of government, and yeah, that's where I live.
Very good. If I find my way down there, I'll make sure we get a cup of tea.
Yeah.
Ben, thank you so much for your time.
Joey, thanks for having me on the pod. It's been a real privilege.
You be
Okay, you
well.
too. Bye bye.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations.